In the early years of the modern Olympic Games, the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, implemented a strict prohibition on the consumption of coffee by athletes. This measure was taken to uphold the principle of fair play and to discourage the use of substances that could enhance athletic performance. The restriction on coffee was just one aspect of a broader initiative aimed at controlling the use of stimulants in sports, as there were concerns that stimulants such as caffeine could give athletes an unjust edge. The IOC's decision to ban coffee as a stimulant was motivated by a desire to maintain a level playing field for all competitors. By prohibiting the consumption of coffee, the IOC sought to prevent athletes from gaining an unfair advantage over their peers through the use of performance-enhancing substances. The strict enforcement of this ban was intended to promote fairness and integrity in sports. At the time, there was a widespread belief that stimulants like caffeine could significantly improve an athlete's performance. The fear was that athletes who consumed coffee before or during competitions could experience heightened alertness, increased energy levels, and improved focus, giving them an edge over their rivals. The ban on coffee was thus seen as a necessary measure to safeguard the integrity of the Olympic Games and ensure that success was determined by skill and hard work rather than external aids. Despite the ban on coffee, some athletes continued to seek ways to enhance their performance through the consumption of other substances. This led to ongoing efforts by the IOC to introduce and enforce regulations on the use of stimulants in sports. These regulations were designed to prevent the abuse of substances that could artificially boost an athlete's abilities and distort the true outcome of competitions. The prohibition on coffee as a stimulant was part of a broader strategy to combat doping in sports and promote clean competition. The IOC recognized the importance of maintaining the integrity of the Olympic Games and took decisive action to address the issue of performance-enhancing substances. By banning coffee, the IOC signaled its commitment to upholding ethical standards and protecting the values of fair play and sportsmanship. In implementing the ban on coffee as a stimulant, the IOC aimed to send a clear message to athletes about the importance of competing with integrity and respect for the rules. The organization sought to create a level playing field where success was determined by talent, dedication, and hard work, rather than the use of artificial aids. By prohibiting the consumption of coffee, the IOC sought to discourage any behavior that could compromise the spirit of sportsmanship and undermine the credibility of athletic achievements. The ban on coffee as a stimulant was enforced rigorously to prevent any instances of unfair advantage or doping in sports. The IOC conducted regular testing and monitoring to ensure compliance with the prohibition and to detect any violations. Athletes were held accountable for their actions and were expected to adhere to the rules and regulations set forth by the IOC. Although the ban on coffee was initially met with resistance from some athletes and coaches, it ultimately proved to be an effective deterrent against the use of performance-enhancing substances. The strict enforcement of the ban helped to level the playing field and ensure that all athletes competed on equal terms. By taking a firm stance on the issue of stimulants, the IOC demonstrated its commitment to promoting honesty, integrity, and fairness in sports. Over time, the ban on coffee as a stimulant became widely accepted as a necessary measure to protect the integrity of sports competitions. Athletes came to understand the rationale behind the prohibition and the importance of upholding the principles of fair competition. As a result, the use of stimulants like caffeine gradually declined, and the focus shifted towards encouraging natural athletic abilities and healthy training practices. In hindsight, the ban on coffee by the IOC served as a pivotal moment in the ongoing efforts to combat doping and uphold the values of sportsmanship. The decision to prohibit coffee as a stimulant reflected the IOC's commitment to preserving the purity and integrity of athletic performance. By taking a proactive stance on the issue of performance-enhancing substances, the IOC set a precedent for promoting clean competition and ensuring that athletes competed on a level playing field. In conclusion, the ban on coffee as a stimulant during the early days of the modern Olympic Games was a significant milestone in the history of sports regulation. The decision by the IOC to prohibit the consumption of coffee was part of a broader strategy to prevent the use of performance-enhancing substances and to promote fair play. The ban underscored the importance of ethical conduct and integrity in sports, setting a precedent for future efforts to combat doping and uphold the values of honest competition. The IOC made the decision to prohibit the consumption of coffee after investigating studies that indicated caffeine's ability to enhance athletic performance by boosting attentiveness, alleviating tiredness, and bolstering stamina. It was believed that these advantages could potentially provide coffee-drinking athletes with a competitive advantage, prompting the IOC to enforce the ban on coffee during Olympic events. As time passed, perceptions regarding the use of coffee and caffeine in sports started to evolve. Subsequent studies revealed that caffeine has the potential to improve athletes' performance, prompting a reassessment of the prohibition. Consequently, in 2004, the International Olympic Committee decided to lift the restriction on coffee, recognizing that the moderate intake of this beverage was not likely to confer a substantial edge to athletes. The decision to prohibit coffee in the Olympics was made during the early stages of the modern games in order to discourage the use of performance-enhancing substances in sports. Over time, as research on caffeine and its impact on athletic abilities advanced, the restriction on coffee was eventually removed. Presently, coffee is no longer included in the list of banned substances in Olympic events, enabling athletes to indulge in their preferred caffeinated beverages without worrying about being disqualified. Please like and subscribe for more content.